Hello! We are Group Z. I'm Sarah Beth Wilson.
I'm Kelly Lynn.
I'm Mo Conti.
And I'm Lydia Hinson.
And we have unknown number 619.
So, our decision ultimately became Staphylococcus aureus. When we began testing, our group thought that our unknown might be Micrococcus luteus. However, as we performed new tests and we did others, we finally concluded that our unknown was Staphylococcus aureus. The deciding factors for that decision came from our gram stain, our catalase oxidase testing, and mostly our litmus film testing.
Alright, so we gram stained our unknown 2 times. The first one wasn't a great gram stain, but at first we thought we had gram-positive cocci, but since we know that it's very easy to contaminate a slide with that, just because how much of it is on our skin, and it wasn't a good slide in the first place, we decided to do a second one. This is a picture of our second stain. You can see we thought we had a gram-negative cocci, but after looking at it more and getting some second opinions, we concluded that we actually do have a gram-positive cocci.
So story time. When we were actually doing our gram stain and we saw the second one, we were confused on whether or not it was gram negative or gram positive. But when we actually finally concluded that it was gram positive, we have like this little chart on the fridge in the micro room, and Lydia had the bright idea of trying to compare our gram stain to whatever examples were on the fridge. And she got super excited because she saw one that looked just like it. And we asked her, we were like, oh my gosh, are we actually done? Did we get this figured out? And she was like, we have gonorrhea. Well, after some logical thinking, we figured out we did not indeed have gonorrhea.
So the color of the colonies, this picture we found, this is just our unknown, and so it kind of has a yellowish tint, if you can kind of see it. And so when we looked at S. aureus, it also had a yellowish tint, and so we kind of matched our unknown with S. aureus and thought that the color of the colonies could be a reflection of what our unknown was. And then this is our oxidase test. We performed the oxidase test twice because it was one of those that kind of helped us to distinguish between a positive or a negative for the gram-positive cocci. However, our oxidase tests were not accurate to S. aureus. Our first test showed that it was positive for oxidase because it turned blue, so we knew that it released the enzyme cytochrome oxidase. And then our second test that we did, it also showed that it was positive for oxidase. So we were a little bit worried because Micrococcus luteus, which we originally thought it was the only one that was positive for oxidase, and so that was kind of like our, we think it's M. luteus. But then, after some further tests, we ruled out Micrococcus luteus. And S. aureus is actually supposed to be negative oxidase, so even though both of these tests were positive, we still believed that it could be S. aureus.
Okay, and we did our catalase test 3 times. The first test we performed was positive, which lines up with what Staph aureus would be. We don't have a picture of it, but those are our results. The second catalase test we did was actually negative, but we think since we took that sample from kind of an old colony, that it might have been inconclusive and just wrong. So we did a third catalase test on our entire nutrient plate of our unknown, and that ended up positive. And so that was kind of like our final conclusion that our unknown is positive for catalase, and that matches up with S. aureus. So yeah, we said that the second test actually was part of what led us to believe that our unknown was Micrococcus luteus because it's supposed to be negative for catalase, and since we also saw that we were positive for oxidase, that's a lot of what led us to initially believe that we had Micrococcus luteus, but since the last catalase test was also positive. That kind of led us back to Staph aureus.
And for the phenol red broth test with glucose, we had narrowed it down to gram-positive cocci, but we weren't exactly sure. We wanted to make sure, and so that we could narrow down exactly what we thought it was. And our unknown and all the other positive, gram-positive cocci produced acid because all of them were a yellowish tint instead of the red color, which was an indication of alkalinity. But in this case, after 24 hours, our unknown actually looked closest to Enterococcus faecalis, which made us even more worried because now we were between Staph A, ML, and EF. So
for our phenol broth lactose test, our phenol red lactose test was actually inconclusive after 24 hours. The lack of color change indicated a neutral pH in our unknown. And Staphylococcus aureus is normally lactase positive, which would make it yellow and indicate that an acid was produced. After 48 hours, the unknown sample indicated an acid reaction. However, this test is meant to be read only after 24 hours, so that test result was inconclusive. And for a while, we did think it was Micrococcus luteus. However, when we tested it in relation to our unknown on both a casein and a nutrient agar plate, our unknown did not match Micrococcus luteus for either one of those. So we began to think that perhaps our unknown was a different gram-positive cocci at that point.
So this final test, the litmus milk test, is what I think finally led us to believe that we have Staph aureus. So this is the picture of our unknown litmus milk test, and this is just a control picture that we found on the internet that matches what we have. So our litmus milk test ended up being a positive acid reaction, and then the milk coagulated at the bottom, which matches what Staph aureus is supposed to do with the litmus milk test. And since that was a really good result for that test, that's kind of what finalized our decision of Staph aureus.
In conclusion, we do believe that we had Staph A. Peace out.
Woo!